film. All right, I'm going to take the Umbrellas of Cherbourg away, as much as I love that music that's been on in the background, and we will say just barely good morning at 11:56 to Terence McKenna. Terence, hello.
Pleasure to be with you.
And you are here for the Whole Life Expo?
I am.
And you will be speaking. Kathy, when will he do his talk?
We'll be speaking on Saturday, tomorrow at 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock in the afternoon?
The Coliseum.
In the Coliseum.
We had such an incredible response to Terence last year. He sold out the biggest room we had. So we've moved him over to the Coliseum, where he hopefully will be able to accommodate up to about 12 or 1,500 people if need be. Okay, well, there is a large audience of people who know all about him or a great deal about him. But for those who know nothing about Terence McKenna, Terence, how would you introduce yourself?
I guess I'm a plant biologist turned psychedelic advocate, transformed into a kind of spokesman for technophilia and psychedelica.
And you have been an author?
I've written a number of books, Food of the Gods, Invisible Landscape, Archaic Revival, just to mention 3 of them.
And the one that I have, this Invisible Landscape, is one that you are touring now, or is that it's been out a couple of years, I think so?
They all came out in the early through the middle 90s, and I've been touring them. I have another book in the works called Casting Nets into the Sea of Mind, but it'll be a while before that comes out. I've also done a number of musical and film projects around.
So you're into music as well?
Well, music is into me. I'm not very musical, but there's been a lot of sampling of my voice, and I've done vocal overlays and things like that with bands like The Shaman and Zavuya, Space-Time Continuum.
Okay. What will you be talking about when you give your talk at the Whole Life Expo?
Well, it's a sort of a broad topic. It's here we are at the end of history. All the world's cultures are melting together. More powerful technologies than we've ever imagined are now in existence. Our political assumptions are in flux. Our environment is being destroyed before our very eyes. All kinds of spiritual and religious prophets are selling their wares in the streets. So my take on all this is basically simply to ask the Mr. Natural question, which is, what does it all mean? How did we, essentially an arboreal primate, ever get into a situation of the sort represented by the end of the 20th century? Is it a mad play without meaning? Is it the unfolding of God's plan? Is it the protocol of the elders of Zion or the alien invaders? Just what is going on? And, of course, the special lens that I bring to this is the much maligned and highly suspect psychedelic experience. Anathema to some, religion to others. One of the most controversial behaviors available to 20th century people, but one that I think is probably very important to recapturing a sense of personal wholeness and then trying to fit oneself into this truly mad, mad world that we've called into being.
The psychedelics that you're talking about might be which drugs?
Plant-based indoles such as psilocybin, DMT, mescaline, the combinatory Amazonian thing called ayahuasca. These are all psychedelic plants and plant mixtures with very long histories of human usage in non-Western society. Western society is the most phobic of all cultures toward the psychedelic experience. It's almost on a par with our phobia toward sexuality. In fact, maybe these things are linked. But in Aboriginal and traditional cultures around the world, spirituality has always been associated with dissolving of ordinary cultural boundaries and states of mind. And, you can do this with meditation and fasting and abandonment in the wilderness and so forth and so on. But the most effective and non-invasive way to approach this, everyone agrees, is through ingestion of psychedelic plants. But because these experiences are so powerful, they challenge ordinary secular and religious authority, and consequently a society, if it chooses to, can get into a real swivet around these issues, such as our society. I don't really link this to the larger problem of international drug syndicates and addiction and all that. That's a slightly different area of concern, because the psychedelics are not addictive and they do not generate huge criminal syndicates. They don't make anybody very much money, but they certainly attract a great deal of media attention, most of it negative, because of their impact on our ways of looking at our politics and our social arrangements and everything about being human.
Terence, the way in which you are talking about the psychedelic drugs that you've mentioned suggests that they might be something other than just for fun or escape, that they might actually have something useful in terms of the human experience for instruction. What are we going to learn from these drugs, or have we learned, or could we?
Well, human culture is essentially a product of the imagination. All our religions, our technical accomplishments, our literature, our poetry, all products of the imagination. This is precisely the domain where these psychedelics impact very, very powerfully. So if we believe that invention, creativity, individual self-expression, insight, if we value these things, then the psychedelics are primary items in our cultural toolbox, because they empower all of those things. It's curious to me that Western civilization, which invented the idea of progress through technology and social transformation, is so phobic of this factor in nature which would accelerate those tendencies in our own culture. So I think there is something for our culture in psychedelics, and there is definitely something for the individual. In a way, culture is like software. It's the operating system in a local area. You download being a Witoto tribesman or a Hong Kong stockbroker, and then behaviors are prescribed. But naive people tend to believe that these operating systems are reality. They're not reality. They're just something you learn as you grow up in a certain time and place. Psychedelics seem to dissolve cultural conditioning. This is one of the things that makes them such political dynamite, because the business of political systems is to convince you of the local operating system, convince you it was sent from God and is beyond critique, when in fact it's just a bunch of rules fellow monkeys pushed together over time to make things easier for the alpha males. Psychedelics dissolve these cultural assumptions, whatever they may be, and for the first time you sort of get to look at the naked human animal and think about where you might want to go personally and as a member, a politically potent member of a society.